Hello, friends, and welcome to the Living Truth podcast. This is Kristin Carey hosting today, and I am very eager to have a conversation with Tammy Gustafson. Tammy, thank you so much for joining me on the Living Truth podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let me tell you guys a little bit about Tammy. If you've ever heard of the Betrayal Healing Conference, Tammy is the founder and the host of this annual conference that happens at the end of January every year, which is a great place to hear experts across the field of betrayal trauma give their insights and hope. Tammy is also a trauma-informed licensed professional counselor. She is a coach, and she has over 15 years of experience. She runs Live Free Counseling, and she is about to release a book at the end of January 2026. So depending on when you're listening to this episode, it may already be out. But her new book is called Broken to Brave: Your Courageous Act of Healing After Intimate Betrayal. And I am just really grateful to have you again on our podcast. You guys, if you haven't heard Tammy's other episode, it's about empowered boundaries, and it's a really good one to search for on the Living Truth podcast. So, Tammy, tell me what inspired you to write Broken to Brave, and yeah, what was it that led you down this path to release this book?
This book has been, I feel like it's been in me. It's been inside of me for many years. In fact, June of 2019, I pulled out some journals and I started taking notes then because I just felt uh, the invitation, this book.
Yeah.
And so it was a long time in coming, but really it is like a long conversation over coffee between me and
Mhm.
a betrayed partner, where I am helping empower her and give her permission to be exactly where she's at and helping her take her next step, because we all know, gosh, when betrayal happens, it shatters everything and you have no idea which way is forward or backward or up and down. You don't even know if it's possible to get to the other side, right? And so after going through this myself and after walking women through this clinically and through coaching, really what I've discovered is these really kind of four phases. I call them the betrayal healing phases. And my goal for writing these down and for sharing them in the book is so
Yeah.
women can have an idea of like, hey, here's where I'm at. Here's some guideposts along the way. Here's what to focus on in this phase, and you don't have to worry about the rest yet. Here's some things not to focus on because it could slow you down or shut your healing down. And just kind of step by step walking with her through this process and kind of being a guide and a cheerleader and a mentor and helping her along so she's not alone in the process.
That's amazing. And because of the fact that you've personally walked through betrayal, you have the capacity to get down in there in a way that a coach or therapist or healing professional who has not personally walked through it could never do. That's just so inspirational. And I love that you took a lot of this from your own journaling in your own healing process. That's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. I know you surveyed over 1,700 betrayed partners in your research. And was there a finding or two that really shocked you, or something that you think every betrayed woman needs to know about in your findings from your research?
I think there were a couple things that stood out to me. One was the huge prevalence of health issues after betrayal.
Yeah.
And this unfortunately is too common, right? But it's totally understandable because man, when betrayal hits and we go into fight or flight mode, the cortisol and the adrenaline and all the stress hormones, we just get flooded with them. And a lot of times what happens is we get stuck in fight or flight mode, or we're just repeatedly thrown back into fight or flight mode. And the impact that that can have on the body over time is really concerning. And so I lay out some of the stats about that just to give women a heads up, and also if they're experiencing this, for it to be validating. And it's also a gentle reminder of, let's focus on us as early as possible in this process. Let's focus on the body, on reconnecting with the body and with health and calming the central nervous system. It took me years into my process to get on board with that and to start doing that. But man, I can't tell you what a difference it made once I started focusing on calming my nervous system. So that was one of the big ones.
That's huge. And a lot. I don't know if this was your research or somebody else's, but there's been a lot of findings of autoimmune conditions for betrayed
Yes.
partners. Yeah.
Yes.
So not just short term, but prolonged health issues.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I
And I
think
lay out some of the different top ones in the book. And I know this is the passion of yours too,
it
the
is.
nervous system and whatnot.
I think it's so important, especially for women. And we have a lot of listeners that are really committed to their faith, to their Christian faith. And I think that there's been this disservice that Western Christianity has done to like separating out the body and the spirit and the mind and the soul as if they're all separate things, right? But that's really a Western mindset. It wasn't the intention of the original writers of the scriptures. There was very much more of an integration of body, mind, and spirit. But in our culture today, it's all separated out. And so a lot of Christians just kind of try to mind over matter their betrayal trauma journey or over spiritualize it or spiritual bypass it, and there's no way, because your body is just your amygdala is hijacked the whole system and in a prolonged way. And so that is a key foundational strategy for healing, is learning what's happening in your nervous system. You're right, that is so important. Okay, what other findings did you have? You said there were a few from your research.
There were a few. Another one is the huge prevalence of abuse that goes along with a lot of betrayal.
Hmm.
And I think the betrayal healing community is becoming more aware of this and talking more about it, which is really good.
Yeah.
But I think what I see is that we haven't done a lot of talking about this. It's kind of one of two extremes. It's either we're not talking about it, or it's going to an extreme on the other end. And so what I want us to look at, and what I'm thankful that kind of the research is so grounding and helpful, and going, no, this is a very prevalent issue that is often linked with betrayal. And so how do we, one, I want to validate that for the women who are going through that. And that can be emotional abuse, it can be psychological, there's a lot of sexual abuse that goes on as well, and there's a lot of physical stuff. And so just one, I think we have left women alone in this for too long. And so for those listening, if you have gone through this, if this has been part of your experience, like, I hear you and I'm so sorry that this is part of it, and that also needs attention. And then also for providers, for us who are helping in the community, just being aware of it and starting to ask those questions and starting to get some help and compassion around that area.
I love that, Tammy. I do find that so many women don't recognize what they've gone through as abuse. And I know we use the power and control wheel that's out there in the world. It's pretty easy to find, but it's linked to a lot of domestic abuse programs. And when they see these are examples, these are abusive patterns. When they see it in writing, women go, oh my gosh, I have experienced that. I didn't connect the dots that that's abuse. That's the first step, right? Of them
Absolutely. And
being
I
able
think
to
it's
deal with it.
also really important because if there's particularly physical abuse, domestic violence going on, there we have to be careful what treatment guidance we give. And I say this in my book several times. If you are unsafe, particularly physically and also psychologically, but sometimes when you confront a man or you set boundaries who is coercive and abusive, it it escalates things and it makes things more unsafe.
Yeah.
So we just have to be careful about that and acknowledge for those who are going through it, because for those who are going through it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is not working. Now what do I do? Right.
Right.
So I think it's just a lot of gentle awareness
Yeah.
that can help us inform and better serve people.
I agree. Yeah, that is so important. So I know in your book you outline a 4-phase framework for healing after betrayal. Can you walk us through those phases and maybe highlight one thing that often surprises women about where they are in the process along those 4 phases?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the first one is called reveal, and that is where that is the shattering. That is when you become aware of what's going on, or it might be that he has relapsed and you're back at phase one. But really, for that first phase, it's all about getting safe. It's all about getting help, really qualified help with somebody who understands this world, and then also getting the truth of what you're dealing with, what you need to heal from, the truth of your reality. And that, that's a full disclosure that can take a lot of different routes, but those are really the three things that I recommend women focus on there. The thing that I think is most counterintuitive about phase one is that what a lot of women come into, totally understandably so, but they focus a lot on trust
Mhm.
and forgiveness.
Mhm.
Like, I have a lot of women that come in are like, I just need to learn how to trust him again. I just need to move, like, how can I just move on with this and get on with it? And I totally understand, because what we're trying to say there is, how do I make this pain stop? And what do I do? And how do I heal? Right. But those are two things. If you focus on trust, or if you focus on forgiveness early on, it doesn't shortcut the healing process. It actually shuts it down.
Mhm.
And so just giving women permission there, going, those two things, like, let's just lovingly take them and put them on the back burner. And particularly with trust, after betrayal, trust is not given, it's earned by him over a long period of time.
Right.
So
Right.
that doesn't even have to be on your plate ever, of giving
No.
trust. It is him earning it and showing you that he is safe over a long period of time. So just helping orient women and helping them focus on what to focus on and not to focus on that first phase. And then moving into phase two, that movement happens either when you have the full truth, or when you know that you will not get the full truth. But either way, that becomes like, you have this new reality that you are now having to deal with and process through, whether you have the truth or not. But you're moving into phase two, and that's really the long, messy middle. So that's the phase where you're still in the relationship of, like, I don't know if I'm going to stay or I'm going to go. I don't know if he's doing the work or if he's not going to do the work. And for you, it's focusing on boundaries and finding your voice and grieving. Like, the grieving process really is the healing process. And
Yes.
so kind of walking through that phase of, hey, here's some things you need to focus on. Here's some things you not. But really there, it's really stepping into your power. It's really getting your feet underneath you. It's understanding that you have great worth and value, and that is not tied to whether your relationship makes it or not. And so that's kind of the big message, along with just stepping into your power and helping her find her voice in there.
Mm, that is so key. And I also, what one thing I thought when you just said that, Tammy, about like you are so valuable, whether your relationship makes it or not. I was also thinking, and whether he says you're valuable or not. Because a lot of
Yes.
women that stay, they're still not fully aware of this slight um, blame shifting, critical thing in their relationship, which really is a form of abuse.
Yeah.
And so they're doubting their own worth and value because, well, if I was so valuable, why would he have done this? They're still trying to make meaning out of why he did this, and they're still kind of listening to him and what he says is true about her. So that is a very tricky phase.
Absolutely. And I think one of the main messages, I'm so glad you brought this up. One of the main messages throughout phase one and two is that this is not your fault,
Yes.
ever.
Yep.
I don't care if there were issues in the relationship. Of course there were, because there are in every relationship, but there are 100,000 things he could have done to stay in the relationship and deal with it. So when he crossed that line, it was 100% on him. So that is a really crucial part early on too, is getting to that place where you have your feet underneath you of, this is not my fault, not my fault.
And not my problem to fix. I mean, obviously
Yes.
we need to do our healing because we want to heal, but not this is not a marriage problem. It's not a problem that
Yes.
I can make go away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what's phase 3?
So phase 3 is where you get to the place where you have a pretty good idea where the marriage is going.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of based on his actions and your desire, right? But path one, there's really 3 paths. Path one is redemption, where it's he has done the work long enough and is consistent enough and safe enough where you're like, I want to lean back in. I'm ready to lean back in, as terrifying as that is, but I want to lean back in, and the relationship is healing. Another path is divorce, where it's like, nope, no, I have got to, for me, I have to get out of this, right?
Yeah.
This is not going well. But then there's also this third path, and it's what I call the roommates. And that's where he is not fully doing the work. He might be doing enough, he might be checking boxes, but he's not fully doing the work. But also, you don't want to leave. And usually it's because of finances or because of kids. And let me just say, I think this is the most misunderstood and overlooked group of betrayed partners.
Yeah.
And it's a really lonely journey.
Mm-hmm.
But there are so many reasons that it makes total sense to stay. And so there's never any judgment about or shame about staying. But I know a lot of people do feel that. Um, but this is also where I see women's lights dim the
Mm-hmm.
most. And so for all 3, for this redemption, or I'm sorry, this realignment is phase 3. And then there's these 3 paths. For all of those, it's a huge transition period.
Mm-hmm.
It's whether leaning back in or divorcing or being like, this is kind of life right now. And so, of course, there's different nuances for each group, but really just understanding that this is a transition piece and getting unique help for each one, or nuanced help for each one, I think is going to be really helpful.
Oh, that's so good. Yes, and I think you're right about that group of women. There's a lot of women that stay for various reasons, even though he's not really doing the work. And I agree that I think that's when we see women start to shut down a piece of their heart. And I'm sure you have great information in your book about how your heart can stay soft and alive in the right contexts despite this difficult staying.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. In fact, I have an interview in there um, that I interviewed a betrayed partner who stayed
Yeah.
and in this exact scenario, but she is thriving.
Oh,
Even though the marriage is not, like, she is still in the house, she is still in the marriage. She's kind of emotionally divorced, but she's still in the
yeah.
marriage. She was just such a beautiful example of somebody who could stay and thrive and survive, but she had to do a lot of work. And so I included that interview in the book because I wanted women in that phase to be able to see themselves and be seen and heard, but also to have an example and some insight from somebody who's walked that very difficult path of how can they actually thrive and create a life that they love living, even
Mhm.
when the scenario around them is not what they ever wanted.
Absolutely. And the reality is that all 3 of these choices have hard and
Yes.
have gifts. And you
Yeah.
could do all of those 3 well. That's very
Yes.
hopeful. Okay, how about phase 4?
So phase 4, everybody kind of comes back together, no matter what happened to their relationship. And this is an organic shift that I see happening when they're far along in the process, when the crisis of the relationship has calmed, when they're settled in of like, okay, we are now divorced or whatnot. But there's this organic shift where I see women kind of go, okay, it's time to focus on me. Like, I have got to do my healing. And absolutely there's healing that happens along the way, but finally they have enough, like they've come up for air enough where they can really kind of focus in on their healing. And I love this phase because this is really where you can stop and you can get a lay of the land and go, okay, where am I at? That was not supposed to happen, but it did. And here's where I'm at. And I'm standing in the rubble. But you know what? There's also some beautiful pieces. And now I have the opportunity and the responsibility to create a life that I'm excited to live from here on out. And there are a lot of picking up the pieces. There are a lot of healing areas that need to happen. But I can do that, and I've got one life to live. And I
Mm,
love the analogy of a mosaic, because this is how I view all this whole process of like that phase one. It's like everything is shattered and there's 1,000 pieces on the ground. That's your heart, that's your life, right? And throughout each of this, you start to sort them out. In phase two, you start to make sense of them. Phase three, you're starting to see patterns and shape. And phase four, you get to, but like you get to intentionally create this beautiful new picture out of these pieces that individually looked shattered and broken, but now put it together, you get to create a beautiful, powerful work of art. And it's
mm,
in the counseling realm, we call this post-traumatic growth, right?
yeah,
But there
yeah.
is good life ahead. There's good life ahead, and you can come out stronger and more powerful, not without scars, not without bruises, but you can come out a deeper, stronger version of yourself. It is possible.
And those scars can actually be very beautiful because they
Mm-hmm.
can be that place where we become the safe people that other hurting people know we can show up and
Yes.
hold space. That is so hopeful. I know the question that a lot of women are going to ask: how long? Right? Like, I'm
Yes.
always like, ooh, like it's hard to answer that, right? But generally speaking, and of course it hits the reset button. You mentioned this, if there's a relapse, or if, let's say, a woman thinks her husband is doing good recovery and discovers, no, actually he was faking it. He just was really good at covering it up. So, but to her, it's like a new D-Day, a whole new, right, explosion. But
Absolutely.
so I know you can't give super big promises about how long these phases take, but I know that's a question women will want to ask.
Absolutely. And I get that all the time in my office. And then I usually pull out my calendar and I start flipping through it. And then it breaks the tension just enough where we kind of look at each other and go like, all right, there
Yeah.
actually is no date, is there? And I'm like, no, there's not. But, it will take it takes longer than any of us want, is the
I
reality.
know.
It really does. But here's the piece that I think is helpful is that we all want a finish line. We all want, like, this is the finish line where I am quote unquote healed, right? And that this is behind me and whatnot. And I want to give, and if somebody had told me this early on, I would be so frustrated, but it's the reality. It's like there comes early on, you are dealing deeply with these parts that are shattered, right? But as you move along, you get to a place where it shifts from becoming about being quote unquote healed, and it can shift into this lifestyle of growth,
Yeah.
this lifestyle of growth and healing. Because there's also the most important relationship out of all of this, in my personal opinion, is the relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
And being like, you know what I want to do is cultivate an attitude where when pain comes up or a wave of grief comes up, that I honor that, and then I give space for that. And then we move forward, and maybe something else will come up along the way. Or I'm always moving towards, how can I be the kindest version to myself? Like, how can I be compassionate and kind to myself no matter what comes up? And so there is a shifting that happens. So I know you want a time frame. I know women absolutely want a time frame. And I don't feel like I can give a general time frame. I just can't.
It's
You
so
can.
important.
If you have any ideas,
No,
feel
I
free.
mean, what I refer to is like the APSATs, Association of, Partner of Sex Addicts Trauma Specialists, for our listeners who are like, what's APSATs? There's so many acronyms in this world. The, mourning and remembrance phase, and which is the middle, sorry, safety and stabilization first. And I mean, I always say that that first phase is like it's it's at least 3 to 6 months after a discovery or a
Oh,
disclosure.
at least
Minimum,
minimum.
probably more like a year.
Yeah.
And then women want to have a panic attack, at hearing that even just that first phase is a year, but it's like you have to stay grounded in the present and know that it will not always feel this excruciating.
Mhm.
That first
Yeah.
phase it really is so disorienting.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so many women wonder, why am I still stuck? And I know you alluded to some of the reasons women get stuck along the way, but are there other stuck points that you didn't mention as you were talking about these four phases? And how can women begin to move forward in some of those stuck points?
Yeah. This stuck points, I'm really passionate about this because, man, this takes long enough. Like we've already talked about, the last thing we want to do is for it to take even longer,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And and there are actually pretty common areas that women can get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for instance, like trust
Yep.
is one, focusing on that too soon, also focusing on forgiveness too soon,
Yeah.
especially in the faith communities.
Yes.
Um, Another area women get stuck is early on, there is this usually unspoken, unconscious, like balancing act um, but between you and your husband, going, whose emotions are going to get center stage? Okay. Is it going to be him and he feels bad, or he's frustrated, or he feels regret and shame? Or but childhood issues might come up, or family of origin. Like, is all that going to get the center stage, or is your grief and trauma and shattering and grieving going to get center stage? And the reality is, a lot of times there's a lot of pull by a man who's not doing good work yet. And also, I think a lot of women just naturally kind of want to go towards helping and putting the focus on him. And the reality is, what I see is, if that the focus goes on him, if she focuses on him and he focuses on him, everybody's healing slows down and stops. His healing, the relationship healing, her healing. On the other side, if she stays focused on her healing and staying in her shoes, and if he can focus in on her healing as well, then everybody rises together. But that's a very counterintuitive part of the process. So I would say, for women who are listening, guys, stay in your shoes, stay in your
Yeah,
shoes and focus on your healing. He does need support, but not from you.
that's
This is
right.
not time to cheerlead him. This is not time to protect him. This is time, like, he needs to go get help from qualified people, healthy people.
Yeah,
But he needs to show up for you. And actually, when he can learn to empathize with you, when he can learn to validate you, that is a crucial part of his healing as well.
I
So
agree.
that is one area.
Absolutely. An insight for our listeners who are like intuitively going to him to focus on him. I think there's an unconscious thing that we have where it's like, well, if I can love him through this, if I can be there for him through this and support him through this, then I'll be safe. But that's not actually really going to stop his unwanted sexual behavior.
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't work,
No.
because he is going to do what he's going to do if wants to do what he wants to do, right?
Yeah,
And so he has got to make the choice, and there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to save him or heal him. He's got to
that's
do that
right.
work himself.
Yeah,
So that's part of the one of it's and it's hard because it feels so powerless.
it
Like
does.
like
It
I
does.
don't I want to do something. And the reality is, the
Yeah.
best thing you can do is focus on your healing and your grief and getting your boundaries, getting your strength and your power. That's actually the best thing you can do for
It
everybody.
really is. Oh, that's so good, Tammy. Any other uh stuck points along
Yeah,
those phases?
another common one that I see is with grieving,
Mhm.
and particularly with anger. Okay. And particularly if we dive even deeper into conservative Christian communities, there is a lot of messaging that thou shalt not be angry, that it is the one socially acceptable emotion for men, and it's the one socially unacceptable emotion for women, right? And so there's a lot of messaging around, don't be angry, just be kind and be submissive, and anger is bad, and don't sin in your anger. And what a lot of women end up walking away from that with is being completely disconnected with their anger. And the problem with that is that if we think about grief, shock and denial in the beginning, but then you come into the main part of grieving, which is really sadness, anger, and there's some bargaining in there, but that's not usually as big. And then at the end, the byproduct of all of that is acceptance. But the main part of grieving is sadness and anger. And what happens is if we pull one out, if we're like, ooh, anger makes me super uncomfortable, or I feel like it's bad, or I had a parent who was scary and I don't ever want to do that. And if we pull out anger, we cycle in sadness.
Mm.
Or if you pull out on the flip side, I was a huge fan of anger, felt strong, it felt safe. But if you pull out anger or sadness and go like, ooh, I don't want to do that sadness piece, that's too vulnerable. If you pull out sadness, then you cycle in anger.
Yeah.
And so you have to have both of those. And so it's really this leaning into all of your emotions are important. All of them are there for a reason.
Yeah.
All of them are God designed and God given, right?
Yes.
And so we have to honor and recognize and allow all those emotions to come through as part of the healing process so you don't get stuck in grief.
That is so good. Tammy, I know this is going to be so helpful, this conversation. And I also want to encourage our listeners to get Tammy's book, which releases January 27th, 2026. So we will put some links, some helpful links in the show notes here. This episode is also going to be released just before the Betrayal Healing Conference. I'm super excited to be speaking at the Betrayal Healing Conference. Tammy is the host of the whole conference. So we'll also put in the show notes a link for you to sign up for this free conference. You can purchase a VIP pass to get all access afterwards, or you can just attend the sessions live and for a limited period of time for free. And so, Tammy, is there anything else that you want our listeners to know as we wrap up our conversation today?
Yeah, I just want to say that I see you
Yeah.
and you have incredible value. And I know this is so painful and I know it feels so lonely, but I want you to know that you can heal.
Yeah.
You can heal, and there is beauty and there is joy and there is adventure in the world again. And so keep going, keep breathing, keep going.
I agree. Thank you so much, Tammy. And listeners, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us. If this was helpful, would you rate, review, follow, or share this podcast? That'll help other people find us and find the help that we offer. And until the next episode, I am holding out hope for you.